Hello and welcome back to St. John's First Evangelical Lutheran Church's hybrid Bible study on the book of Genesis. Today we will be diving into two chapters, Genesis chapter 33 and Genesis chapter number 35. Now, as you may recall from our previous video, the two brothers, Jacob and Esau, were about to come face to face for the first time in a number of years. And we recall how Jacob was feeling quite nervous about it, to say the very least. So here in chapter 33, we actually see how this reunion unfolds. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. Now, we talked about the significance of these numbers last time out. It signifies a great deal of worry for Jacob concerning the numbers, because there is a fear that they are coming as an army to vanquish him. Now, given what has happened before, how he was forced to flee because Esau wanted to kill him, it is understandable to believe and to think that Jacob was fearing for his life. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants, who we talked about last time as well, of course, and he put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on before them. So he's worrying. He is quaking in his boots. Verse 4. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. What happened just before this? Well, in verse 3, Jacob himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. This, of course, is a sign of submission, and that takes us back quite nicely here to Genesis chapter 25, verse 23, where Rebekah was told, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. Yet it is the younger submitting to the older. But as we just saw before that, Esau ran over to meet him and they embraced. It was a nice reunion between the two brothers. Who are these with you? Jacob said. The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Again, note the submission language. Then the servants drew near and their children and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And lastly, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, What do you mean by all this company that I met? Now, do we remember that from last time? If we do, great. If not, that is not a major disaster, as we see in Genesis chapter 32, verse 13. So he stayed there that night, Jacob. From what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking cows and their camels, and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys, which were sent before him to his brother. I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Again, we have to go back to Esau's feelings when he did not receive the blessing, but his brother instead got it. So let's look at that blessing again, the second blessing to Esau. Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So there will come a time where Esau will be satisfied with his lot, and he will no longer be weighed down by the fact that his brother is the one who received the inheritance from their father. Very interesting indeed to take note of here today. Jacob insists in verse 10, Please, if I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Now, what do you make of that verse? He had come face to face with God and lived. We talked about the comparison there with Moses later on in the Bible. What this is talking about here is unmerited favor. That Jacob really was very fearful about what is going to happen, but as we can see here, he was accepted by his brother here in verse number 10. He received unmerited favor from his brother, just as he had from his Father in heaven, who had appeared to him in the preceding chapters, of course, as well. Now, Esau said in verse number 12, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant," again submission, "and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Esau said in verse 15, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Any thoughts on that? Jacob is not following his brother. It's a polite refusal. Yes, it is. Is it a convenient excuse? Again, that is open to our interpretation. Perhaps you have thoughts on that. Maybe there's a certain degree of lack of trust there for his brother still after all this time. Maybe he will change his mind, and maybe when they're all sleeping, he will take his revenge on his younger brother. Again, that is indeed open to interpretation. So let's now dive in to chapter number 35. Not saying that chapter 34 is not important. Again, we are picking the significant parts here of Genesis, and I do encourage you in your own time to read the content of Genesis chapter 34. And if you have any questions or comments on that, or think we need to spend some time in it in a future Bible study, then please reach out to me or just put a comment in under this video here on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever it is you may be watching. God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there." Do we remember what the name Bethel means? If we split that in half, so Beth-El. Beth means house, El short for Elohim, God, house of God. "Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." This is the place where Jacob had been sleeping in the wilderness, and now God is telling him to make an altar there. So the corresponding verse to that is Genesis 28, verse 18. "So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, 'Put away the foreign gods that are among you, and purify yourselves and change your garments.'" What does this remind you of? Is this a precursor to one of the 10 Commandments, perhaps? Again, if you have any thoughts, or if you completely disagree with any potential parallels here, please include those in the comments section underneath this video. "Let us arise and go up to Bethel, so that I may make there an altar to the God who answers me in the day of my distress." What this indicates, of course, is a consistent relationship with God, that he receives consistent responses from God to his prayers and to his petitions. It is not a distant relationship, of course. It indeed is an intimate one. "So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods that they had, and the rings that were in their ears," so the visual demonstration of faith in a foreign god, "and Jacob hid them there under the terebinth tree that was near Shechem." Terebinth can also be translated as an oak tree. Now, of course, we have to remember that traditions, cultures are different in the East compared to the West. What you can say is this terebinth tree, this oak tree, was like a landmark. For example, if you are going through rural America, in Montana, for example, and you are trying to get to somebody's ranch, they're not going to tell you route mark 156, take a left, so to speak. They will say, well, here is the Esau garage. You take the next left after the Esau garage, go up the hill a few blocks or a few miles, and then you will come across our ranch. It's that kind of visual landmark that people would have known about if they had lived or were aware of this area. "As they journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob." So God had kept Jacob and all of them safe at this time. Right. Okay, so we'll move down a little bit here to the deaths of Rachel and Isaac. So they journeyed from Bethel, which of course we remember is house of God. When there was still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel went into labor. So Rachel is of course pregnant, and she had a hard labor. When her labor was at its hardest, her midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for you have another son." And as her soul was departing, for she was dying, so it was a very heavy, difficult labor, so much so that she would end up dying, she would call her son the name Ben-Oni. Now, Ben-Oni can be translated in many different ways. It can mean son of my sorrow, son of my strength. What we can tell here, what we do know here, is that the name Ben, the word Ben, actually means son in Hebrew. However, his son would actually be called Benjamin. I should say that her son, better English there, was called Benjamin, which means son of the right hand. And Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb. It is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Israel, of course, Jacob was renamed Israel. We didn't even get to that yet. Again, that was said as well after his wrestling with God. Was it an angel? Was it God himself? Was it Jesus? Again, we had that discussion last time out. So, Benjamin is the last of the 12 children who are listed here. And we are then told that Abraham and Isaac had sojourned in this place, Mamre or Kiriath Arba, Hebron. Now, Isaac was 180 years of age when he breathed his very last breath. Okay, we'll go back just a little bit here into Genesis 35 in verse 9. God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you." Remember Genesis chapter 12, this whole promise made, of course, to Abraham, made to Isaac, made to Jacob. And of course, very significant indeed. So if you have any questions or thoughts about anything we have gone over today or in previous Bible studies in the book of Genesis, do not hesitate to send me a private message or comment underneath the video here on YouTube or on Facebook. And one final thing I would like to share with you is the very bad action of one of Jacob's children. Now let us dive in and have a look at it. And it is in Genesis 35:22. When Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Of course, sleeping with your father's concubine is not a good thing. It's a challenge to his pater familias role, father of the household, the main person of the household. It really is a challenge against Jacob's position as the head of the household, as I just said there. And there would be severe repercussions for that, which we will eventually get to in our Bible study here in Genesis in the penultimate chapter, chapter 49. So if you are impatient and want to see what that would be, head over to Genesis 49 verses 3 and 4. May the Lord bless you this day, and I thank you again for watching and participating in this Bible study. Have a blessed day, stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. God bless, and bye-bye.